Pax Christi Nigerian Catholics. Today I want to speak about a story that has saddened many Catholics in Nigeria and around the world, obviously. It's a story of Father Anthony Odiong, a Catholic priest who has been found guilty by a jury in Texas, United States of America, and sentenced to life imprisonment, together with additional prison terms for sexual assault offenses. Now, believe me when I say this is not an easy video to make. When this news broke, it was hard, very hard to come to terms with, to comprehend, especially because many of us, myself inclusive, were completely heartbroken when this news broke. I personally hesitated because I wanted to be sure of the facts, and let's just say I was in denial because of how deeply saddening this news was. Many people who knew Father Odiong remember him as a prayerful priest, a gifted preacher, and a man whose ministry touched lives. Others encountered him in a very different way and came forward with allegations that eventually led to criminal charges, a trial, a conviction, and a sentence. As Catholics, we must approach these matters with truth, justice, humility, and prayer. I'll begin with what we know, which has been publicly reported. Father Anthony Odiong was ordained a Catholic priest for the Catholic Diocese of Uyo. Later, he ministered in the United States, serving in various capacities in Texas and Louisiana. Over time, concerns began to emerge regarding his conduct with women who were under his spiritual care. The allegations became more widely known after investigative reporting brought forward accounts from several women who claimed that Father Odiong had used his position as a priest and spiritual director in ways that crossed serious moral and personal boundaries. Eventually, a woman identified publicly in court proceedings as Mary Doe contacted law enforcement authorities in Waco, Texas. Her complaint led to a criminal investigation. The case that followed was not simply about whether relationships existed. Prosecutors argued that Father Odiong used the trust, influence, and authority that came with his role as a priest and spiritual director to manipulate vulnerable women. During the trial, multiple witnesses testified. Women described encounters they said occurred while Father Odiong was acting as their priest, spiritual guide, or confessor. Former students and other witnesses also testified regarding behavior they considered inappropriate. Prosecutors presented evidence that they said showed a pattern of conduct extending over a number of years. The defense argued that the relationships were consensual and did not constitute criminal sexual assault. After hearing the evidence presented by both sides, a jury of 8 women and 4 men found Father Anthony Odiong guilty. Following the conviction, the sentencing phase of the trial began. Victims spoke about the impact the events had on their lives. Additional testimony was heard by the court. At the conclusion of the proceedings, the jury imposed a life sentence on one count and additional 20-year sentences on 2 other counts to run concurrently. Father Odiong's lawyer had stated publicly that he intends to appeal the verdict. Therefore, while a conviction and sentence have been handed down, legal proceedings may continue through the appellate process. Now, Everything I have said so far concerns matters that have been reported publicly through court proceedings and news reports. What I'm about to say is not additional evidence, but a reflection. The tragedy of the Anthony Odiong case is not merely that a priest was convicted of serious crimes. The deeper tragedy is that a vocation intended to bring people closer to God became, according to the court's findings, a means through which vulnerable people were harmed. For us Catholics, a priest occupies a unique place of trust. People reveal their fears, failures, family struggles, and spiritual wounds to him. They seek guidance precisely because they believe he represents something greater than himself. When that trust is violated, the damage extends far beyond the individual victim. It affects faith, affects the community, and the credibility of the church itself. This case also reminds us that spiritual authority is a powerful form of authority. A person seeking spiritual direction is often in a vulnerable moment of life, during grief, marital difficulties, loneliness, or personal crisis. When a spiritual guide exploits that vulnerability, the harm can be profound because the victim is not only questioning a person, but also questioning the very faith that person represented. Another important lesson is that holiness cannot be assumed simply because someone wears a cassock or holds a title. The Church has always taught that priests are human beings capable of both virtue and sin. The priesthood is sacred, but priests themselves remain accountable to moral law, civil law, and the church law. At the same time, Catholics should resist the temptation to allow one scandal to define the entire priesthood. Across Nigeria, the United States, and the world, thousands of faithful priests continue to serve sacrificially, often in difficult circumstances, caring for the sick, celebrating the sacraments, educating the young, and preaching the gospel. The crimes of one priest do not erase the faithful service of many others. Please take note of this. The Father Odiong case should therefore be seen as both a warning and a challenge. A warning about the consequences of unchecked power and a challenge for the Church to strengthen transparency, accountability, and protection for those who seek spiritual guidance. Ultimately, the story is not only about a priest who fell, it is also about victims who found the courage to speak, investigators who pursued the case, and a church that must continue the difficult work of ensuring that trust placed in its ministers is never abused. Please remember to pray for all our priests and all our missionaries. I'll talk to you soon. God bless you.